Hello students, in this video we'll try to discuss vectors. What are vectors? Its properties. First we'll discuss vectors. So what is vectors? Vectors are something quantity that have both magnitude and direction and obeys the triangle law of vector addition. So what are vectors? Vectors are quantity that has direction and obeys the So what are vectors? Vectors are quantity that has both magnitude, direction and obeys the triangle law of vector addition. जो generally the students have confused because they only take magnitude and direction into consideration. They don't take the third point into consideration. That quantity that has both magnitude, direction and also obeys the triangle law of vector addition. So how are vectors denoted by? Vectors are denoted by this. An arrow above that sign. Okay, so it is a and cap, where a is the magnitude. A is magnitude and it denotes direction. Denotes direction. Okay, so a vector is a n cap. A is the magnitude and n cap is the unit vector that denotes direction. Unit vector that denotes direction. So what are vectors? Vectors are quantity that has both magnitude, direction and obeys the triangle law of vector addition. So we see that how vector is represented. It is represented by an arrow on the above that any number or any name. Vector should an arrow sign should be there, and a vector will be a n cap. This capital A, this is magnitude, and n cap denotes direction. Okay. Now we'll try to discuss triangle law of vector addition. Try to discuss triangle law of vector addition. Okay, what is this? When two sides of a triangle, when two sides of a triangle are represented by two continuous vectors, in the same direction and the third side in the opposite direction denotes the resultant. So what is the triangle law of vector addition? Triangle law of vector addition: when two sides of a triangle are represented by two continuous vectors in the same direction, then the third side in the opposite direction denotes the resultant. Suppose there are two vectors represented in this way. Suppose A vector and in same direction, same way. A vector, B vector. Then the third side this way in the opposite direction. This is going in this way, this should come in this side, but the resultant will be in the opposite direction. So C vector is equal to A vector plus B vector. So C vector is the resultant. So what is the triangle law of vector addition? That when two sides of a triangle are represented by two continuous vectors in the same direction, then the third side in the opposite direction denotes the resultant. So suppose this is A and B. These are two vectors represented by two sides of a triangle in the same direction. Then the third side, this third side taken into consideration in the opposite direction. In the opposite direction will be taken as the resultant. This will be C vector, and C vector is equal to A vector plus B vector. Then in the same way, it is also polygon law of vector addition. Okay. Polygon law of vector addition. So what are polygon law of vector addition? That if or when a number of vectors are represented by the sides of a polygon in continuous direction. Then the resultant will be the resultant will be the closing side in opposite direction. Closing side in opposite direction. Okay, let us suppose this is a polygon. A vector, B vector, C vector, D vector. Okay, this opposite direction will be E vector, whereas E vector is equal to A vector plus B vector plus C vector plus D vector. So what is the polygon law of vector addition? When a number of vectors are represented by the sides of a polygon in continuous direction, in the same direction, then the resultant will be the closing side in the opposite direction. Let us suppose this vector A, vector B, vector C and vector D are represented by the sides of a polygon in a continuous direction, in an anti-clockwise direction. So the last side, the closing side, that is E vector, in the opposite direction will be the resultant. That means E vector is equal to A vector plus B vector plus C vector. Okay. So what is the polygon law of vector addition? That when a number of vectors are represented by the sides of a polygon in continuous direction, then the resultant will be the closing side in the opposite direction. Okay. So triangle law of addition and polygon law of vector addition, I think so it is clear to you all. So now one more thing we'll do addition and subtraction of vectors. We'll do addition and vectors. So let us suppose a vector plus b vector. So let us suppose in this way, a vector plus b vector. So the resultant will be this side, c vector. That means c vector is equal to a vector plus b vector. And if it is a vector minus b vector, it will become a vector plus minus b vector. That means this a vector will remain as it is. This is b vector. Okay, this will be minus b vector. So this d vector is equal to a vector minus b vector. So in addition and subtraction of vectors, what we see that a vector plus b vector, if it is represented by two sides of a triangle in a same direction, then the third side in the opposite direction will be the resultant. So C will be a vector plus b vector, and a vector minus b vector, it's not subtraction, it will be a vector plus minus b vector, because plus minus is minus. So this a vector remains the same, this b vector is in this direction, so minus b vector will be in the opposite direction. So a vector minus b vector, so a vector plus minus b vector is equal to d vector. So d vector is equal to a vector minus b vector. Okay, now we'll be doing parallelogram law of vector addition. Parallelogram law of vector addition. When two sides, sides two vectors are represented by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram then the resultant will be the diagonal from the vertex of two adjacent sides. So what is parallelogram law of vector addition? When two vectors are represented by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, then the resultant will be the diagonal from the vertex of the two adjacent sides. Let us suppose this is two vectors, okay? So this is A vector, this is B vector. So this is represented by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram. So this will be the diagonal passing through this C vector. So C vector is equal to A vector plus B vector. So what is parallelogram law of vector addition? When two vectors are represented by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, then the resultant will be the diagonal from the vertex of the two adjacent sides. That means if A vector and B vector are represented as two sides of a parallelogram, two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, then the diagonal passing through the vertex of the two adjacent sides will be the resultant of the two vectors. Okay. In the same way, if it will be minus b vector, then this b vector will come in this way, a minus b vector, and this will be the resultant a minus b vector. Okay. So now we'll do the resolution of vectors. Okay. So let us suppose that resolution of vectors. Vectors. Okay. When a vector is projected in 3D, then can be into its components along the three axis of Cartesian coordinate system. Cartesian coordinate system. Okay. So resolution of vectors. What is the resolution of vector? When a vector is projected in 3D, then it can be broken into its components along the three axes of the Cartesian coordinates. Let us suppose this is the okay. Suppose this is x-axis, this is y-axis, this is z-axis. Let us suppose this is a vector. Okay. Okay. This is vector. Let us suppose this is O A. So OA vector, it will have a component along x direction, it will have a component along y direction, and it will have a component along z direction. So the component along x direction is called x component, along y is called y component, along z is called z component. So let us suppose there is a vector OA is projected into the three-dimensional. So it will have three components along x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. The component along x-axis will be called x component, the component along y-axis will be called y component, and the component along z-axis will be called z component. And that means it will have some magnitude and direction. So we know that a unit vector along any three axes of equations are represented as I cap, j cap, and k cap. So So the three vectors, OA vector will be xi cap, yj cap, zk cap, whereas I cap, j cap and k cap are unit vectors along three axes of equation, three axes of three axes. Okay, so OA vector will be xi cap plus yj cap plus z cap k cap. That is, x is the component along the x direction, y is the component along the y direction, and z is the component along the z direction. So this denotes x, y and z denotes the magnitude, and I cap, j cap, k cap denotes the direction, because it is a unit vector. It is a unit vector. It has magnitude 1 only. So x multiplied by 1 will be x, y multiplied by 1 will be y, z multiplied by 1 will be z. And I cap, j cap, k cap are unit vectors to denote the direction. That I cap is along x axis, j cap is along y axis, and k cap is along z axis. Okay, so OA vector is represented by three components. Its component along x axis known as xi cap, its component along y axis known as yj cap, and its component along z axis known as zk cap. So OA vector will be xi cap plus yj cap plus zk cap. Okay, now we'll try to understand the dot product or the scalar product. Dot product or scalar product. Product or scalar product. So let us suppose there is a two vector, a vector dot b vector. The value will be ab cos theta. A vector का magnitude, b vector का magnitude, and cos of theta, whereas theta is the angle between a vector and b vector. Okay, so a vector dot b vector is ab cos theta. Okay, whereas theta is the angle between a vector and b vector, and so a dot b is equal to ab cos theta. So a vector का mod is the magnitude of a vector, and b vector का mod is the magnitude of b vector, and cos of theta, and theta is the angle between the a vector and b vector. Okay, now let us suppose there are two perpendicular vectors, a vector and b vector. So angle between them is 90 degree. Okay, so a vector dot b vector will be a vector b vector cos of 90 degree. Cos of 90 is 0, is equal to 0. So dot product of two perpendicular vectors are 0. That is, dot product of two perpendicular vectors is 0. Dot product of two perpendicular vectors is 0. Okay, now so what is dot product scalar product? That is a vector dot b vector. It will be ab cos theta. This a is the magnitude of a vector, b is the magnitude of b vector, and cos of theta. Theta is the angle between a vector and b vector. Let us suppose that there is an angle, there are two vectors, a vector and b vector, between which the angle is 90 degree. Then a vector dot b vector will be ab cos 90 degree, and cos 90 is 0, so it will be 0. So dot product of two perpendicular vectors is always 0, is always 0. Okay, now we'll try to understand the cross product or scalar product. So scalar product or cross product or scalar cross or cross product or vector product. So let us take two vectors, a vector cross b vector. It will be a vector का mod b vector का mod sin theta n cap. Okay, as n cap is denoting n cap is direction perpendicular to a vector a cross b vector plane. Let us suppose this is the a vector, this is a b vector, a vector, this is b vector. So the cross product will be in a plane that is perpendicular to this plane. It will be perpendicular to this plane. It will be perpendicular to this plane. So what is the cross and vector product? That a cross b is a b sin theta n cap. N cap is in perpendicular direction to the a cross b plane. That is the plane in which the vectors a and b are lying. Okay, suppose the a and b vector are lying in the xy axis, so the cross product will be in the z axis. Understood? So this way it will be perpendicular to the plane of the plane containing the a vector and b vector. So a cross b will be ab sin theta. So let us suppose there are two parallel vectors, a vector, b vector. So theta is 0 degree. So a cross b is equal to ab sin 0 will be 0. Okay, so the cross or the vector product of two parallel vectors is always a parallel or collinear vectors is 0. So cross product of two parallel collinear vectors here this is 0. Why? Because the angle between them will be 0, so sin 0 is 0. So cross product of two parallel or collinear vectors is 0. So what is cross and vector product? Cross or vector product, we will find a cross b, a vector cross b vector will be ab sin theta n cap. N cap will be in the direction, it is a unit vector that denotes direction, which in which direction it is perpendicular to the plane of the a vector and b vector. So let us suppose a vector and b vector plane is in xy axis. Okay, a vector b vector lies in xy axis 2D. Okay, so the resultant of the cross product will be in a plane in the z axis. Because why? Because z axis is perpendicular to the both x and y axis. Now let us suppose there are two vectors, a vector and b vector. Angle between them is 0 degree. Okay, so a cross b will be ab sin 0 and sin 0 is 0. So cross product of two parallel or collinear vectors is always 0. So I hope your doubts and concepts regarding the vectors are must be clear. So I hope you will like the video, and please like, comment, and do subscribe my channel. And if you want to ask any topic, if you want to have to video on any particular topic of the physics, you can go in the comment section and you can comment. I'll reply. I'll definitely go for it. Okay, then this is Gaurav signing off. Thank you so much.